Hello everyone, and welcome to this video where I want to talk about road-based vehicles and specifically some of the things I think the developers can add to the game to improve our experience when it comes to road-based vehicles. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of vehicles that I've made, and this is only a fraction of the total vehicles that I have made, so I have a decent amount of experience. And when it comes to the road-based vehicles, I saw that there's some gaps that can be filled. I asked my Discord server, I asked my YouTubers, and there was some comments and some great suggestions. Some of these things that I'm going to suggest can be applied to rail-based vehicles, air, spacecrafts, all kinds of things, marine-based vehicles of course, but I'm going to talk about them in the application of the road-based vehicles. Now, some of these things can be done with XML editing, but before all the comments say you can already do this with XML editing, I'm thinking that XML editing has a place, but a lot of times I find that it makes the game a bit more unstable, sometimes causes crashes, causes glitches, you can walk through them, the physics are detrimental, that type of thing. So there is some point of the game where I think that some of these things can be added to the base game, and then of course there's some things that I think can be, kept to XML editing, of course. So without further ado, let's begin. Cars are probably one of my biggest passions, and playing games like BeamNG and really heavy, intense simulators of vehicles, I'm fully aware that Stormworks can never be that, and that is totally okay. But what I am finding is that there's some parts of Stormworks that can probably be adjusted to give us a bit better functionality, especially when it comes to handling, and especially when it comes to some of the visual aspects of the vehicles. So the first one that I'm going to discuss is the differential. Now, as many of you know, there are different types of differentials. We're going to talk about open, locking, and limited slip, and how all of these types can be utilized with just one single piece. Now, in a vehicle, the differential is usually this pumpkin-shaped thing. Obviously, in some cars it's more pronounced, in some it's not as pronounced, but really what it does is it splits the wheels. So if we go to this mode, this piece here is where the differential would sit. And in essence, it would just be a T-pieced section, so it doesn't have to be bigger than a 1x1 block. Especially if you're going to use the larger sized wheels on a smaller vehicle, you physically can only make it a 1x1 block, otherwise you wouldn't be able to use the piece. So I recommend it to be a 1x1 piece, and it will come in either a closed variant like this if you want to make the thing waterproof, or it'll look just like this impeller pump where it comes with sort of two nodes on the side and one piece in the middle. This even looks like a differential. So if we go ahead and put it like that, that would be our differential piece. Now it would come with, when you press the logic under data, currently there's nothing for this pump, but you'd actually have a sort of Boolean piece that allows you to select whether it is locked or open. And the point of that would make one piece, so one single differential piece that has the Boolean, so on-off functionality, open or locked, will also let you, in essence, make a limited slip differential, assuming we get one extra part, which we're going to talk about later. But pretty much, it would just be one piece, just like this, that gives you the option with an on and off switch to make it either vector the torque fully equally between the two. So if it is open, it would allow you to spin the wheels at different speeds. If it's locked, we get what we currently get now. So I think the base application of it could possibly come in a locked setting, and then we press on and it becomes open, or opposite, because anyways it would be a new piece, so it wouldn't really matter. It wouldn't really retrofit any of our old creations. We'd have to go and add them ourselves. So actually probably it would come in an open position, and then by pressing an on switch we lock it up. So it makes it much better for off-road use, but not only off-road use, it lets us sort of take turns without the wheels slipping, spinning out, and it also has more applications. I also forgot to mention the differential piece would also be connected to the electric. So it would have one node with the Boolean and one node with the electric. In the case of propellers, for example, on marine vehicles, you can actually drive one single propeller or wheel with multiple engines, and they can be at different RPS, and you won't have to turn off one of the engines or use clutches. You could just use that differential piece for them. So it has applications more than just on vehicles. Same way if you have multiple engines on a single wheel, same thing applies, because currently we can have a setup of clutches, but they don't quite work the same way and allow that sort of splitting of the torque and RPS based on them. So there's going to be different applications to this piece in terms of the mechanical world, but I really do think that that would add a lot to vehicles. So this is my most important piece out of all of them. Out of all these suggestions, I think having a differential piece will add that much more to the game and to the existing system that we currently have. Which brings me to the next point, which is to have another part added on all the wheels. So no matter what sized wheels, you'd have a logic point output added, and it would pretty much be slip. So wheel slipping or wheel traction. Now if we go to the rails, we currently have here a node that says wheel slip detects if wheels are slipping, resulting in reduced torque. I believe this should also be applied on all of the wheels in the game, because then with the joint differential piece that I talked about earlier, you can actually make a limited slip differential. So once one wheel starts to lose traction, you can enable the limited slip differential, and not only that, it lets you make traction control systems in the game. So you can actually detect if a wheel is slipping and use traction control systems, and it lets you make ABS, so the anti-lock braking system. So if you're braking and your wheels are losing traction, you'll actually end up sort of functioning them like it'll function differently. Now see here, I threw this truck into rear-wheel drive, and here we are getting a nice burnout going, a nice sort of drift. But really what's happening is this makes rear-wheel drive vehicles very difficult to drive in the game, because right now we have just that like fully locked differential. They have to spin at the same speed, and not only that, there's no way to enable a traction control that's going to prevent this type of thing. So that would allow us to detect if a wheel is slipping, and depending on which wheel it is, then we can vector power to the others and make all kinds of different creations. So this would just simply add one extra node to the wheels, to all the wheels, and allow us to add that. The next part is having a transfer case. Now I don't know if you saw me changing here the transfer case, whereas 1 is full four-wheel drive, 0 is full rear, and you can kind of set it to anything in between. Obviously, I know you can use a numerical switch box to have this function as a button, so you just press a button and it turns on your four-wheel drive or turns off your four-wheel drive. But all it really is this clutch right now that is putting power through here, and in essence stopping or limiting the amount of power flowing through that. Now I think that it would be quite simple to add a transfer case piece that would act just like this clutch, but instead of having the clutch pressure, it would just simply have an on and off switch on that transfer case. Now, while I do think that it is not so necessary to have that, because we already have the clutch that we could use the same way as a transfer case, there is a little bit more to it. Because first of all, I'd assume they'd be a little smaller maybe, even though right now we have the this guy here, which is 1 by 2. It could be a little smaller, it could be 1 by 1 block, so a little more size efficient. But also that type of system could be applied then to the traction control. So if you have the wheel with the slip, and then if it detects the wheel slipping, you can actually make an all-wheel drive system. So instead of being a full-time 4x4 system where equal power is going to the front and rear wheels, you can use the transfer case as an all-wheel drive microcontroller, and if your front or rear is slipping, it activates your front wheels and in essence makes them sort of active on the spot instead of having to vector power in terms of a number. So not a big deal, we already have pretty much that, but I think adding the transfer case piece would just be a simple on and off switch that can allow very simple microcontrollers for if our wheels are slipping in terms of not getting traction here. The last of the functional suggestions would be to add double wheels for all the wheel sizes. So 3x3, 5x5, 7x7, they come with double wheels just like this, which would let us make a true dually system. So currently, right now, this wheel is free floating, not doing anything. Yeah, it's spinning, but it's not really connected. It's connected by sort of me putting a block here and then deleting the block and adding in the other wheel. So right now, these outside wheels add nothing. They don't give power, they only give braking and handbraking functionalities. But it would be really nice to get sort of a bigger wheel system that comes with dual wheels or double wheels that lets us get double or some fraction of more power to the wheels. So it would let us actually make more powerful creations that use the fact that they have this dually system and potentially give us less wheel slip. They potentially would have, you could have a fully rear-wheel drive vehicle, and because you have four wheels pushing, it would actually not kind of cause an instantaneous slipping out. So double wheels would serve many functions, and we already kind of can fake it, but really it would just be having just one model that is both of these wheels with one variable brake and one sort of handbrake setting. So, and of course steering. If you want to have dual wheel steering, you could also do that too. You could currently do it here. They'd function a little bit differently, so maybe not have any steering. That's kind of the limitation. If you have double wheels, you only get the braking advantage and you could put power to them, but you can't steer. Maybe that's kind of the trade-off. Anyways, that would make true dually systems much more efficient and function properly here. Now on to the more aesthetic side of things. So not functionality, but just game aesthetics. It would be really nice to see tintable windows. Now we already have a nice window reflection in the game. You can see that's already almost tinted or smoked. So the game already comes with window textures like that. Now maybe you can't fully limo tint them, black them out to the point they're opaque, but it would be nice to give up to like 20% tint and use the paint additive to change the tint. So if you want to have green tint, you just come here and boom, you'd paint it, or black tint, or pink. Now actually, it could be that you don't even have your select node on the windows at all. It could be a fact that you just use additive and black, and that tints your window. Like if you click here, that tints it. If you put this gray, it makes it a little less tinted, and white would just be purely see-through like what we have here. And then you can apply an array of different styles, just like we have the buttons here that you can go this to fully this. This would give us the ability to have kind of a mesh of colors. Now where would come advantageous? First of all, aesthetics, but of course also if you're driving in a very bright setting and looking at the sun type of thing, you can have like your upper windows on a ship or sunroof windows where they're tinted. Now I don't even think the developers would have to change shadows. Like I would personally just leave the shadows that we currently get through the window like that. So they're not, the shadows wouldn't even be changed by the tint. Easiest way to change it, it would just be a visual there, and obviously you looking through the windows would kind of give you an advantage if it is dark. And it would look really cool on limos, it would look cool on yachts, it would kind of help a lot of the aesthetic factors that we're currently missing, because sometimes you don't want a truck that looks like a fishbowl, you want to kind of give it a little bit more depth than that. Talking about windows, I know that this has been requested many times by many different people, including myself, but I would love to see more windows. I really would. I know that there was an update back in the day that pretty much released new style windows for the game that gave us a lot of these kind of angled pieces and stuff, and that was an awesome thing to see. But I think that we could definitely use a couple more windows, and that would also help us with our ships in the marine setting, and it would help us, of course, with vehicles. So it would be great to see every style of angle so that you could get a 2x4 wedge piece, a 4x4 wedge piece, that you can have wider windshield pieces as well, it's not really a stretch for the developers to just give us sort of like the full, like, so it'd be like a 7 by 3 or 4 wedge piece, so you could just have a proper one single windshield piece like that. That would look awesome. And of course, yes, you can use XML edited pieces. I know there's tons of people that made awesome creations like this that give us a wide variety of window pieces like you see here. But the problem with all this is the fact that these windows aren't sealed. So yeah, you get a nice curved piece here. This is like a 1 slope with maybe a 4 high, but it's not fully sealed, so your ship will end up leaking water. You can't really use it. So you could use it with cars, planes, helicopters, things that aren't sealed. But not only does it sometimes crash, in my case I actually had crashing, and I actually used an XML edited window piece for this boat, as you can see here, but a couple times I found that my game had crashed because I used it, and then of course you come up with these types of awesome creations that someone else has made with a bunch of XML edited windows, but some of them get weird things like this. This one has a weird glare when you're looking through it, so they're not really, while they do work, and I mean kudos to things like this where you can actually end up with more functional things, I do think getting a wide variety of windows would just help so much in terms of the creations. And that's one of those things where I don't need a bunch of XML edited blocks to like create different shaped boats, but it would just be nice to create different shaped curves and slants and have sealed off compartments that give us that ability as well. Another suggestion would be to add indicators that are on sloped and curved pieces. So just to give you a little bit more paintability, it would be nice to see these types of like sloped pieces, triangular pieces, and even more like longer pieces like this that can get painted. Now whether it's all feasible, because of course stuff like this ends up being like too wide and this here ends up being a little bit different, it would be nice to come up with a system that gives us like, say all these red surfaces can be paintable. I could see them being used on a variety of applications where we end up with kind of functional things. So it would give us a little bit more aesthetic. I mean, of course, now we have a very boxy style of design. Even the sports cars have a very boxy design. And I know you can XML edit and stretch and tweak these types of pieces, but just to get in the vanilla game a little bit more type of painting would always be well served, and I think would help a lot of nice creations. Last but not least is for the modular engines, where we actually see the addition of a coolant piece or coolant property in the radiator. So whether the radiator comes spawned with this coolant property, or whether you have to actually add a T-piece in the front and a tank to this. I'm just going to quickly show this. But up here we'd actually have a coolant as a fluid type, and it would just transmit the properties of the coolant would help cooling of the engine. That's simply it. It would help a lot of the overheating issues that a lot of the engines are seeing, and it may just kind of give us that extra little bit of boost to these engines that currently people are seeing a lot of overheating problems. I know they fixed some of them, they fixed most of them in my case, but anytime you exceed 20 RPS, you end up overheating. So coolant would give us a little bit extra kick in terms of the engine capabilities, I think. So that's it for my suggestions here for cars. I do love making cars, I do love cars in real life, and I'm always happy to see any type of addition that can make them a little bit more functional and a little bit more useful in the game. So thank you all for watching, stay tuned for more content, for more creations, and as always, happy Stormworksing everyone.